Hey, Jeff. Long time no see, my friend.
Long time no see. Well, technically, I did see you in person, but for the podcast, it's been a little while. I think it's safe to say that we have both been very busy.
Yes, we've been quite busy, and it should be clear to everyone that's ever listened to our podcast that we do other things.
We
and
do other
we've,
things.
we've been doing those other things quite a bit the last couple months, but I'm so happy to be back with you. I don't want to let the year end without us getting another episode in the bag. So
Absolutely.
today's going to be kind of a mixed bag of some questions from some viewers or some listeners. And I've got some other questions for you, Jeff, I want to take a little time to look into a crystal ball with you.
Excellent. The year end friend to friend interrogation. Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
that's a good episode
Yeah, I've been
title right there.
All right, I swear I haven't broken any laws that you know of this year. And oh wait, you probably want to talk about photography.
Yeah, we should talk about photography.
Okay, let's
So
do that.
let's go ahead and start with the questions. We'll get the questions from our listeners out of the way.
Yeah.
In fact, I say listeners, both of these questions are from the same listener. So maybe we only have one listener. Certainly possible. And I do want to remind folks that if you have questions for us, you can go to our website, photocombobulate.com, and you'll see a contact us section where you can send us questions. And we'd love getting these. And these are both from Chris. And I want to tackle both of them are completely different. So we're going to tackle them separately. The first question is taking photos outdoors in public eye, right? So going out to a park or some sort of public place with our camera gear. What do we do to make sure that we stay safe and our camera gear stays safe? Camera gear is expensive. What what do we do to sort of prepare ourselves and mitigate the risk of taking our gear out in public where it might get stolen and we might get beat up, whatever, that sort of thing. So,
Yeah, yeah.
do you want to take a stab at that?
Well, I think the thing I want to stab at is like it doesn't sound like it would be a big deal, but and maybe this is because these sort of things have been elevated in the news, but especially, I mean, not to point fingers, but especially in the Bay Area, it seems like there have been a lot of instances where you have, people who have been assaulted and their gear stolen,
Mhm.
or their cars broken into. And so it's become a very real thing. It's not so much just there's a guy with a camera,
Right.
doing whatever, taking pictures of birds or whatever. Um, and I mean, unfortunately, I'm not really sure what to say other than, like, you got to have a real good situational awareness,
Hmm.
which is really hard when you're a photographer, because in addition to all the things that we've talked about, you're talking about, you're focusing on your composition and you're looking through a viewfinder and you're trying to you know be in the moment and all of that stuff, and then also you need to have eyes on the back of your head, making sure that you don't have anybody that looks overly sketchy or whatever.
Hmm.
So um, you know if possible, I think ideally you go with somebody else,
Yeah.
and you have something where I mean, it could be that you're both focusing on other things, but I believe there's probably less chance of that. And also, I would say, as much as possible, like, there are ways that you can go out and do photography without really advertising that, hey, I've got $4,000 worth of gear on my back.
Right.
And so some of that is also in planning. Go someplace where maybe there's going to be a lot of other photographers. You're doing, sunrise, sunset shoots, something like that. Or pack real minimally, almost like a street photographer or something that you can just grab, get in and out, and just not make it real obvious. As some photographers, like, you just see them and you're like, that guy's carrying at least a couple of lenses, and like, don't make yourself a target. Even
Yeah.
though I say that knowing that you shouldn't have to not make yourself a target, but in some places, that's going to be the reality.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did I just cover everything you were going to say?
No, no,
Good.
actually, I got a bunch of other things to add. Uh, First of all, insurance. Be insured. And if you're not a professional
Oh yeah.
photographer, um, there's really good chance that your homeowner's insurance will cover, or your renter's insurance even will cover your photographic gear, your camera gear, even if you're not at home. So check your insurance policies. If you don't have insurance policies, you can get camera insurance. If you're not a professional photographer, you can get camera insurance fairly inexpensively. If you are a professional and you're using this stuff professionally, you definitely need to have camera insurance. And so I'm really well insured. And I know that if it came down to somebody wanting to assault me for my gear, they're going to get the gear without a problem from me.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. I'm like, hey, here you go. And can I take a photo of you real quick for the police report so I can get my insurance?
Yeah, yeah. Can I have the
So
memory card?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I would go, just let me have the cards, right? Here's the other thing that I think is really important. And you mentioned this, don't advertise that you're a photographer. And certain photographers that I've seen out in public, it could be street photography, even out in a less urban environment. A lot of times they really look the part. They've got this giant bag, they've got tripod, cameras. There's things you can do if you're concerned about being out alone, especially with camera gear, is don't advertise too much that you have camera gear in your bag. So we've talked about this before. Never, I don't think I would ever own a camera bag that had a camera manufacturer name on it. So I would
Yeah.
never have a Canon or a Nikon, or God forbid, a Leica bag that's got a big logo on it. That would just be silly. The other thing is a tip that I don't think we've ever shared before in this podcast is I really think that the camera manufacturers do us no service by giving us straps with our cameras that have the name of the camera really big in the strap.
Yeah.
Canon especially, they're the worst. It's the bright red strap and it says Canon EOS whatever model number on the strap. That's really garishly advertising that you've got an expensive camera. So when I do use a strap, it's a strap that has nothing on it. It's just a simple plain strap, Peak Design strap, which has no logos. I know people that tape over the logos of their expensive cameras. I don't know if that makes a big difference in a lot of situations. Most people that are out there stealing camera gear know what that stuff's worth, whether it's got tape over it or not. So I would just, again, emphasize the insurance part. Now, the next part's going to be a little more anthropological. I think that people who steal brazenly, are going to go up and assault somebody to take camera gear and things like that. They're going to respond to body language. They're going to respond to sort of a physical presence. And so I don't worry about this too much. I'm kind of a big guy, so I feel like I'm not the easiest target. But you definitely don't want to act timid. You don't want to act scared. Be bold. If you need to, stand up for yourself. Make yourself stronger looking, and that can be as easy as just your attitude. And we've talked about with street photography and things, you want to be friendly and you want to be nice, but if you're feeling threatened and you don't want someone to think you're an easy target, then don't look like an easy target. And I don't know what that looks like for each individual person, but you and I are both big Ted Lasso fans, right? And that's that one episode where Hannah Waddington's character builds herself up, right? She's this big, tall, powerful woman, and she's like, she builds herself up and builds herself up. That's what I'm thinking of. That's sort of like make yourself look like you're not someone you want to mess with.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
but when it
well,
comes down to it, don't get beat up for your gear. It's not worth it.
yeah, yeah. There's that line where you don't want to look intimidated, but if that situation comes up, there's no good reason to push it or be aggressive or, um, do that photographer thing.
Right.
Like, well, like this is my stuff, and yeah, it's not worth it. It's just not worth it, man.
It's not worth it. I think your tip too of doing photography in numbers is a strong tip, but it's not always
It's not
possible.
always
But
possible.
if you can go out with a friend, and if that friend looks a lot like Dwayne the Rock Johnson, then you're probably gonna be just fine.
That's why you like to go shooting with me.
I do, I do. That's if you can bring Jeff Carlson with you, you know. You just reminded me. I had a friend a long time ago that always tell me, I don't have to run. I I don't have to run that fast. I just have to run faster than you.
Yeah.
And being chased by a bear or something like that.
Right,
Um,
right.
so let's go on to the second question. This one's a little more involved, I think. This is a question about hard images, so prints, printed photographs. And presumably, in this question, we don't actually have access to the original negative, slide, or digital file. These are prints, let's say they're old family photos. How do we get those digitized? How do we get those into our digital workflow and preserve them that way? And do we keep the prints? Do you keep the prints? And if so, how do you preserve those prints so that they can stay as in good a condition as you found them? What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Okay, thanks.
Do you want me to start on this one?
Well, no, I mean, so so there's a lot here. Like
Yeah.
the things that Chris mentions in his message in his question to us was really, how do you digitize these, and then also how do you preserve them? And another thing that I want to make sure we go back to is, what do you do with the hard copy after?
Right.
Because he's also very concerned about, okay, now that I have all these things digitized, how can I ensure that they are going to be accessible for, years, decades to come?
Right.
And so I definitely want to touch on that because I've done a little bit of research there. But in terms of just digitizing, my mom did this a few years ago. She had collected like all these boxes of photos and just went through, like, this was her project, and just digitize, scanned everything. And basically what she did was she had a flatbed scanner.
Hmm.
And I don't know, like, exactly what's on the market right now. I think that you can get like sheet fed scanners, but a
Hmm.
lot of those are document scanners.
Right.
And so,
For receipts and things like that.
yeah, exactly, for receipts and forms, and they're great for that. I use that all the time, but they're not really geared toward making reproductions of photos.
Right.
Um, I am guilty of using. There's an app on the phone that Google made. I'd have to find it. We'll put it in the
Hmm.
show notes. It's like
Okay.
photo capture,
Sure.
something like generic enough that I can't remember it and I have to go look for it
Exactly.
every time. But it's actually an ingenious little app that you use to basically take a picture of a photo, and
With your phone?
with your phone.
Okay.
But what it does is it basically takes four pictures and then stitches them together, so you have like a nice high resolution version.
Oh, wow.
You like move it over, and it's got a little indicator, and you know sort of position it so that the little blob shows up. You take a picture, and this and
I
this and
see.
this.
So you're taking it in segments. You're taking the
You,
photo in segments and
you're
it
taking a
stitches them
photo.
together.
Exactly. And
Okay.
so you're getting a slightly higher resolution version, but you're also, it tends to mitigate glare,
Mhm.
because glare is a big problem with those kind of
Yes.
things. And I've done that, and I have many digital images of those, but it's time consuming and the quality isn't great.
Right.
There are also things you can go out and do a search on the web for, solutions where you basically use your camera as a scanner, and you build, like, even out of cardboard or something, a little mounted thing that will point down, and it turns it into like a little light box. So you put your picture in there and you take a
Mhm.
picture with your phone. That's all good too. But I think if you're looking at boxes and boxes of photos, I would invest in getting a flatbed scanner, or a sheet fed scanner, something that is very specifically designed for taking pictures of for not taking pictures, for scanning pictures of pictures.
Right.
That was too many
Right.
pictures, but
No, no, I tracked with what you're saying. I'm
okay,
picking up
okay,
what you're putting down. So
yeah,
one thing that I would add to that is a lot of us have the equipment we need to do really high quality images of flat um, prints.
mhm,
It could be a painting. It could be any kind of artwork, two dimensional artwork. If you have two lights or two light sources that are the same color temperature, so let's say you have two LED panels, which would be a good option for this type of work, and you put them on the opposite sides. So I'm picturing like a tabletop, and you set up these lights on both sides, angled down at like a 45-degree angle. That way, the light's even from both sides. You don't have any uh, hot glare on one side and shadows on the other, anything like that. The other thing is that that print, if possible, needs to be as flat as possible, so
yeah,
that it's not picking up any irregularities in light across that. And then if there's a way to mount your camera straight down over that print, so a lot of tripods, that's going to be problematic because the tripod's in the way. There's ways to uh, mount your camera on a pole, like a monopod, that you can clamp to a tripod. Some tripods have that ability with the center column to come off to the side. However you do it, you could even handhold. You probably got enough light to work with. You could probably handhold the shot, but you want a lens that can focus fairly close. So a macro lens works great for this. The problem is sometimes macro lenses are like 100 millimeters, and so you can't really get that far from the image to get the whole
yeah,
image in. So you have to gauge that. So using your really nice digital mirrorless or SLR camera, you can take these photos. But your phone does a good job too, like you said. You know, even without using a stitching program, you know, my iPhone 15 Pro Max is 48 megapixel raw file. It's going to take a really good picture of that print close up. Um, and so I would suggest doing that. If you have a lot, like you said, you're going to need to come up with a solution that's more scalable. There's also the option of sending these prints out, um,
mm.
or possibly even locally. Here in Portland, I've got a guy. I got a guy. He's his
Everybody's got to have a
you
guy.
actually might be able to mail this stuff to him. Look him up online. He's got a website. It's called Photo to Canvas, and his big thing is he does canvas prints and wraps
Mhm.
right there in his shop. And I've taken images to him to have canvases made. But he also photographs artwork, and so he does a lot of this. He's got a studio set up specifically for photographing two-dimensional pieces. So if you had a lot of things, you could send it to somebody. But there's also services that have really high-end scanners. And the one I'm thinking of is a provider we've talked about before, which is Bayphoto. So bayphoto.com. They have a special drum scanner, and I think it's meant for big negatives and slides, but it's a spinning. It's not a flatbed scanner. It's a special optical scanner of some sort. And I don't know exactly how it works, but they can do really high fidelity, high resolution scans of smaller prints and smaller negatives and slides with that. And if you had a bunch, you could send them off. Years ago, I sent off a bunch of stuff to, I want to say it's a place called Scan Cafe. I don't even know if they're still in business. If they are, I'll
Mm.
put a link in the show notes. I sent a bunch of prints to Scan Cafe, and they just, I'm sure that was a flatbed scanner, and they just bop, 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 bop. And I got a CD-ROM. That's how long ago this was. I got a CD-ROM of all the digital
Yeah.
files. So there are services out there that do that. Did you want to add to that?
Well, yeah, actually, because that reminded me. So, a guy who used to work at Adobe that I met back when I was doing Adobe Go Live,
Wow.
writing books about Adobe Go Live. Um, Several years ago, he left Adobe and he started a company called Chaos to Memories,
Oh, wow.
which is in the greater Chicago area. It looks like I'm
Okay.
just looking him up here, but he does like that might be the answer, especially for a big job like this, because he and his company. I mean, I don't know how many employees he has, but he's running a successful company doing this, where they will scan the prints and fix some of them. Like there are all sorts of services that go in service of this idea of you've got all these prints everywhere, you've got all these digital files everywhere. and they make sense of them.
Hmm.
So definitely check that out, and we'll put a link in the show notes for that.
That's great. That's a great tip. So
Yeah.
there's another part, two parts to this question that we need to answer. One is, what do we do with these digital files? How do we secure
Yeah.
these digital files? And Chris asks very specifically, how can I get this out there enough so that it's probably a cloud backup, right? Backed up on the cloud where other people in my family can access it if I go away, right? Beyond our lives. And
Yeah.
I think about this a little bit. I've amassed a lot of photos. If I got hit by a bus tomorrow, God forbid, what what are people going to do with my digital images? Will it just sit out there on some server somewhere or on my hard drives until people throw them away? uh, I think that having an online place, a cloud-based place where you can share these things, something like, I'm going to say Dropbox, but I know as soon as I say that, it's not the best option, right? But Google Photos, Dropbox, but it's a shareable place. I know Lightroom's shareable. You can share certain albums and things. So I think what I would probably do for me, because I have a Lightroom based workflow, is I would create a Lightroom album that's a shared album. And I would make sure that everybody in my life that might have an interest in those digital images has a link to that. But honestly, Jeff, how evergreen is that? How long is that going to last?
Yeah, I mean, okay, here's the thing, and this also applies when you're talking about like photo backups. Like you want to have multiple options. Don't think
Hmm.
that, all right, well, my entire photo library is here and here it is.
Right.
Digitally, that's just not going to work because cloud service might go away.
Yeah.
I mean, the history of photo cloud services is filled with graveyard markers because there've just been so many different uh, companies that have come and gone. I mean, honestly, like you know, Flickr might be a good option because they've been around for a long time, but been around for a long time is a real relative thing.
Digitally speaking, right? Yeah.
Digitally speaking, yeah, yeah, and the problem with the cloud services is that you're continually paying to do that. So,
Mhm.
yes, definitely have some sort of a cloud thing, and especially something that other people can access easily. That's good. You also want to have backups on hard drives, and
Right.
have people know how to get to those. Um, and then this is where you start looking out a little bit further. And unfortunately, so I did some research for this for my Take Control of Your Digital Photos book. And the answer hasn't really changed. And the answer is there's still no good digital archiving solution for this. Um, CD-ROMs or DVDs, they don't last. Like they break down.
Well, and
Magnetic
do you have a CD drive? I know the answer. You do have a CD drive, but I don't anymore.
I have one that I would have to dig out and hopefully have a connector and a USB adapter, like
Is it on top of your zip drive? It's on top of my zip drive in my closet, right?
you know what? I have a whole box of zip disks
Yeah.
and I loaned my zip drive to somebody who never returned it. So
Yeah.
they're all just there. Yeah,
So, but we
exactly.
thought those were permanent solutions, but they're not.
They're not, yeah. Magnetic tape
Oh.
is slow. Like
Mhm.
there are some versions of magnetic tape that are being used for archival purposes, but then like that's almost another issue. That's
Right.
that's like sort of corporate archiving. Um, and this is gonna this is gonna make you laugh. If you want to preserve these,
Print them.
print them. Yeah,
Print
yeah,
them.
yeah.
That's what I was just thinking. Yeah.
Which which goes back to his question, which was, okay, now that I've scanned all these things, do I just toss out the prints? And you're like, no,
No.
no, no, no. Like find some place to store it because it'll cost you less to store those, in a storage unit or your cousin's attic or whatever. And that can be printing, I mean, obviously, I don't think you're going to go print 100,000 photos
No.
um, out of your
Yeah, don't print your
library.
whole library. Yeah.
Don't print your whole library. But that could mean either making your own prints, which is fine, or you know, going through someplace like, I don't know, Bay Photo, someplace that will do a good job, not
Mhm.
your local Walgreens or drugstore, whatever. Like those won't really do a very good job.
Well, and you can print them yourself, but make sure you're using paper that's and ink that is rated for 100 years, right?
Yeah.
Archival paper, archival ink. We've all made color prints and they fade and fade and fade. You need to make sure if you're making prints or getting prints made, that they are built to take, long-term storage, and then get them out of the sun, store them in a dark place that's dry.
Hmm.
I'm thinking safe deposit box or safe, honestly.
Yeah.
If I had a bunch of family photos, that were really, really precious to me, and I did not have, and I wanted to, ensure that they lasted, I would definitely digitize them so I have a backup,
Hmm.
but I would never get rid of those original prints. I would do everything I could to preserve them. So I would seal them in some sort of container and keep them in a dry, um, a dark place. The problem with that is I'm also doesn't look at like it from my office here, but I'm also kind of a minimalist. I don't like having boxes and boxes of stuff. So I think about Chris's question. It makes the observation that some people just don't care. They don't want to keep this stuff.
Yeah.
Um, if it's boxes and boxes, yeah, it's too much. How much do we need to keep? Is a great question. I would say if that photograph has deep meaning for you, it's worth keeping. If you look at it and go, if the question is, maybe someone else will think this is important, it's probably not worth keeping, right?
Yeah.
Um, I'm not somebody who wants to put that burden on somebody else and be like, well, maybe my kids will think this is valuable. You know,
Yeah.
maybe not. You can ask them, I guess. But uh, I'm anticipating the day where my parents bring me a box of photos and say, "These are yours now." I'm like, "No, what
Great.
to it? I'll put them with my other
Something
photos."
else.
Right?
Yeah.
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 So this
Well,
is such a great question. Yeah.
it really is, so two more things I want to add. One is that in terms of archiving digitally, um, this is a terrible answer, but the answer is basically make sure you buy new hard drives and you migrate things to the new hard drives. The advantage is your hard drives are getting less expensive and
Hmm.
more capacious, so you can get bigger hard drives for less money. But capacious is a great word. I
I
love
love
that
that
word.
word.
Uh, but hard drive technology, if you don't run the hard drives, they can get old, they can stick. Uh,
Hmm.
you know,
You're
and
talking about spinning disk hard drives,
I'm talking
not
about
solid state.
spinning disk hard drives, but also solid state drives. That's okay, but they depend on a magnetic state,
Mhm.
not magnetic, but a um, yeah,
Electronic.
yeah, electronic state. And
Mhm.
so, like all of that data can be just as ephemeral. And so basically the answer has been you, you push your library to another hard drive and you just sort of push it forward into the future and hope that at some point there's going to be something better.
Right.
I'm sure that some places like the Library of Congress, like they have much better options and answers, but I don't think they do. I think they just have more expensive
Yeah.
versions of what we're talking about here.
Yeah,
Um,
it's a tough one because I have a box of hard drives in my basement that I no longer have the connections on my computer for, right?
yeah,
We mentioned this with the CD-ROM drive and the zip drive, but I have a MacBook Pro with USB-C ports, and so if I am going to connect a drive to that, I need to make sure I have the right cords, and so
mhm,
and do I have the power adapter, right? How many of our older hard drives required external power? And do you still have the plug for that? Or did you throw it
yeah,
away? And you can't spin that drive up anymore. So this is a really tough question. I think this does parallel our discussions in the past on digital asset management. And I think that redundancy is important. Have backups, have cloud backups, and have terrestrial backups.
Mhm.
Have multiple terrestrial backups, and make sure your terrestrial backups are as evergreen as possible, so that you can still access them with your computer. Don't say, "Oh, I've got them on that old hard drive down in the basement," and then you find out that that old hard drive is stuck. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, that's not good.
All right. Couple more things. I mean, here's the problem with this question is that it just keeps leading to more and more details.
Right.
But I would say another thing, like thinking in terms of you have like say a Lightroom library. One thing to remember with Lightroom is all the edits are in Lightroom. They're not in those files.
Yes.
So maybe what you want to do is maybe once a year, maybe the holidays roll around, and part of what you do when you have a break is sit down with your, coffee, rum, eggnog, and you take all of your best photos that you took during the last year and just export high quality JPEGs of those so that you have
Mm.
like the finished version that's archived somewhere.
Wow, I never thought
Because
of that.
yeah, because if let's say 10 years in the future, I want a picture that, of you and I on a photo workshop or something,
Mhm.
that I spent a lot of time in Lightroom editing. Well, that image file by itself is just the original. And so if
Right,
I want all of the edits where I, erased myself to make the photo look better,
right.
cut myself out, then then you need like another version of that. All right, and then the last thing that I thought of, based on what you said, thinking about those prints, and I don't know how practical this is, but it could also be like, let's say you have all of these old photos and all these prints, and like you just have no place to go. You don't have anywhere to store it. You don't
Mm,
want to deal with it. It's probably worth looking up like um, historical organizations and see if they would want to take some,
mm,
museums or heritage
right.
centers, things like that. Like they might have the ability and the desire to have photos like this to show, you know, this is what things looked like in the 1990s and the
Yeah.
2000s, and you know, e- e-
Especially if there's events involved, right? If it was like a
yeah,
neighborhood parade, 4th of July celebration, that sort of thing is definitely gonna have a museum curator's gonna definitely gonna have an interest in taking a look at them. At the very
yeah,
least. They're gonna take a look.
yeah,
And they may have some good ideas like, "Oh, we can't take them, but, there's this service in town that'll put them in a dry, safe place for you for $10 a year," or whatever. I have
yeah,
no
yeah,
idea
yeah.
if that even exists. It's a nice thought. I do remember I worked in museums for quite a few years, and I do remember going into collections rooms, which are basically like that warehouse scene from Raiders of the Lost Ark, right? Just racks and racks of boxes.
Yeah,
And there are people out there whose job it is to curate and keep those things safe. And they'll always be thinking about the best practices for photo storage. And, you know, I'm I would say if I had a bunch of prints I need to keep, I would definitely think about how they're stacked, how they're, what's between them. I'd put tissue or something between them, not Kleenex, but tissue paper between them. Perhaps if they're really valuable prints, I would think about maybe mounting them and putting them in something that's going to keep them
yeah.
really flat and safe. I have a tote in the basement. I'm embarrassed to even say this. I have a tote in the basement of, we're talking about a big tote of negatives from back in my days as a photojournalist.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
probably thousands of rolls, and there's also a bunch of slides in there, pages of slides, but they're all in glassine pages and they're in
Mhm.
binders. And so I think they're fairly stable, but I do every now and then I go look at that tote and be like, is it in a good spot? Is it where it could get wet? Is it where it could get dirt in there, that sort of thing? And
Yeah.
so, you got to think about that stuff if you want to keep these things. But I got to say, Jeff, I don't know if I need to keep that stuff. That's sort of
Right, right.
scratching
Well,
on
and
my minimalist itch a little bit.
yeah. Well, and but here's the thing. you take photos that were printed, developed and printed, let's say before the 1990s,
Hmm.
those are like, even though there are tons of them, they're going to become increasingly rare because of exactly what we're talking about, because everything is shifted to digital.
Right.
And so I have a feeling, in the next 20 years, those are going to become even more valuable, even if they aren't, historically noteworthy or whatever. They're going to be artifacts of this is what life this is what life looked like
Hmm.
at this time. And you're just not going to be able to get some of those, because I think with digital making such an extreme rise and overtaking print,
Right.
like, you're going to be able to look back at a timeline and there's going to be this sharp cutoff where suddenly there just weren't many prints available
Right.
because all the printing labs went out of business because nobody wanted prints anymore.
Yeah.
And so that's going to make those even more valuable. Now, does that mean you're sitting on,
No.
$100,000 worth of prints?
No.
No. But they're going to be valuable for researchers and, you
Some
know,
of them. Some of them.
some
I'm a little skeptical. I'm a little skeptical on that, but
okay.
I'm. I even think about, my box, my tote of slides and negatives. There are images in there of events that were newsworthy events, that
Mhm.
were significant events, and there have been times where I've gone back and dug through them and said, "Wow, these are." Um, two things. Wow, a lot of these are crap. Like I wasn't much of a photographer. I was young. I thought I knew what I was doing. The other thing is, there are people and things that happened and that I captured that are significant.
Mhm.
So every now and then I go revisit that. Like these are historical things, but that's a small percentage of the overall volume in that tote. Not every page of slides and not every page of negatives contains historical things. Now, all that to say, these are the ones I decided to keep and bring with me when I left my jobs, right? These were ones that I did not want to lose. Um, there were many, many thousands of rolls of film that are probably tossed. I'm sure the newspapers I worked at in the early to mid 1990s do not still have my negatives from those days. I'd
Probably
be
not,
shocked
no.
if they did. Be shocked if they did. So anyway, I think we hammered a nail into that one.
Yeah.
Let's move on to our third chapter here, Jeff. I want to talk about this year. It's 2023. We're recording this in mid-December, and it's that time of year where everybody starts talking about their year in review, their favorite photos, their favorite events and things from the past year. And I just wanted to spend a little bit of time kind of recapping 2023 photographically,
Mhm.
and what it's meant for us. It felt like this year just blew by, just like in a
Yes.
blink of an eye. I felt like this year's gone by quick. Um, how do you feel about 2023 photographically? How did you do?
Well, okay. I I sort of feel like I did better. I was going to go back and look at this time last year, or maybe it was right after the beginning of the year, we had started to think about um you know what sort of goals we wanted to have. And
Right, I remember that.
yeah, I don't actually remember many of the goals. I guess that's
I should have written them down.
yeah. It's it's in a podcast. It's saved for all
It's
time.
saved.
But I do remember one of the things that we both talked about was taking more pictures of people,
Right.
because you and I do a lot of landscape photography, a little bit of street photography, but not as much portrait photography. And that was going to be something that I wanted to do more of. And I'm happy to
Mhm.
say that I have, not nearly as much as I had envisioned at the beginning of the year, when I was like, I'm going to go and find people, I'm going to approach people on the street, and I'm going to take portraits and blah 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 blah.
Yep.
Like, didn't quite get to that point, but I did do some paid portrait shoots.
Mhm.
I took a class on doing like outdoor exterior lighting, uh, and portrait photography. where I, got some really good images that I've
Oh,
used
cool.
in articles and like good examples and things like that. And so like I actually feel like I, made a good couple steps forward toward getting out there more. I think in terms of like being a quote unquote professional photographer slash maybe commercial photographer, like I did more paying jobs this year than I have maybe in any year.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that I am now a full-time photographer, not even remotely close, but I've never been a full-time photographer. I've always
Right.
been a writer and an editor and a publisher and all that. But being able to, I've taken on some assignments. I shot two events.
Hmm.
Um, you know, really, maybe it was three events. Anyway,
I think it was quite a few. I mean, you've been busy. You've been busy this year.
yeah. So like I've actually been doing things that this is gonna sound super pretentious, but like trying to walk the walk and not just talk the talk, which is very easy to do when you're in my position where I am writing about these things. And so I've wanted to make more of an effort to be able to go and do different types of photography and do it for clients where I'm under a deadline and not just me, you know, wandering around Seattle trying to find pictures of things, which I've also done for other things, but
Yeah.
um, so that I'm am more informed on the stuff that I write and the podcast that I do and all of that. And I wrote a book on editing in Lightroom, so I had to go take a whole lot of pictures for that. So um, yeah, my my imposter syndrome is telling me like, oh yeah, but that doesn't really count. But you know what? It actually really counts.
Yeah.
I had a pretty good year. I just can't understand how it's already December. That's the
Right.
problem.
Yeah. It's like, wow.
Yeah. How about you?
It's funny. One of the things I do every year is, and this is just a practice I've done uh, for as long back as I can remember, is I do a smart collection in Lightroom,
Mm,
where I say, any photo taken in this year, and I have one for each year. And so if I look back, looking at my Lightroom library under collections, I've got this going all the way back to 2014 is when I started doing this. And it's funny, in 2014, I shot 23,057. I kept 23,057 images. Um, and it looks like I've hovered right around the mid 20s for several years, and then it started going down. And this year is consistent with the last 3 years. I'm right about 17,000 images that I've kept.
hmm,
And I think that's reflective of a couple of things. One is I don't go out and take photos unless I want to go out and take photos. That's one thing that you and I both share, is that we don't have to go out and make photos for our livings. We like to. We like to do assignments. We like to do jobs. We like to do fun trips and things like that.
yeah.
But we're also living lives. We've got families, and we've got projects and things going on. You've got books to write, articles to write, and all of that. So I think back to this last year, I really wanted to take more photos of people, and I really did. I feel like this year I think about all my favorite photos, and they're people photos, and I want to do more of that. I'm kind of hooked. I went out. I was down on the Oregon coast a couple weeks ago for Thanksgiving, and I went out and was trying to make photos, just landscape photos. And it was kind of a pretty morning. I just wasn't feeling it. I just wasn't feeling it. I've been to those areas a lot, and I was like, oh, it's
Mhm.
pretty, and I went down to the beach in Bandon, which I just love, and we went there, and
Yeah.
I like taking photos there. But unless the light is just blowing my socks off, I'm just like, man, I could just enjoy this. And I feel like I'm entering this phase. And I mentioned this we did a little road trip together for some fall color. And I mentioned this, I'm starting to think of photography as sort of like yoga, that it's good for me to do it, but no one needs to watch me. Right? Uh, I don't need to show my photos. I don't need to show my work. It's just a good practice, and I'm
Yeah.
starting to sort of embrace that. I went and photographed a dance performance of a modern dance troupe in town, and I've got some connections now because my daughter's in dance, and I asked if I could come photograph this dress rehearsal, and I went and photographed it, and I had a really great time. I shot a ton of photos. I still haven't gone through and edited them. You know,
Yeah.
we went on this fall color trip. I haven't really looked at those photos. I feel like I've done a lot of photos this year, and I haven't really looked at them. So maybe one of my things for next year is to shoot less and use them more. Maybe that's a good thing to think about because I feel like the photos I've taken this year, I enjoyed making them, but I haven't enjoyed using them for anything, which is
Yeah.
sort of heartbreaking if I think about it too much. But I will say this: I really enjoyed taking photos with my phone this year. I took a lot of photos with my phone.
Yeah.
I feel like the iPhone has now become a pleasing device to make photographs with. It's not just convenient; it's actually it gives me results that make me happy. But it's been a year of scrutinizing gear, right? And thinking about camera gear and what I want to bring with me on trips, what I want to bring with me day to day. And I think one thing that hit me this year was I really wanted to scale down. I've brought up the word minimalism a couple times. I'm really starting to think that one of the things that stresses me out in life is that I have too much stuff around me that's kind of weighing on me, distracting me. It could be responsibilities, it could be stuff. But I've been trying to kind of pare down a little bit and make things a little simpler, which is hard to do with two kids, big house, and all of the stuff
Yeah.
that I take care of.
Yeah.
But, I got rid of some camera gear this year. I got rid of things that I didn't really need, and I've got a big pile of stuff downstairs I need to get rid of still. But I picked up one thing, and I wanna talk about gear just for a second, if you'll bear with me, Jeff, and we're gonna probably do an episode on this eventually, but I got a Leica camera, and I'm not somebody who's lusted after Leica
Oh
for a long
boy.
time. Yeah, I'm not somebody who's been like, "God, someday I'm gonna have a Leica." I've always sort of thought of the brand as, kind of
Snooty,
snooty and overblown, right?
uptight,
Like a Porsche.
stuffy,
Yeah, exactly. All those things, right? Um,
pretentious.
pretentious and
I could go on. This
we
will be
could go
fun.
on and on. We both have friends that use Leicas and things. I When the Leica Q3 came out and was announced earlier this year, there were several things about it that really made me stop and go, wait a second. This is
Mm,
speaking to that minimalism part of me that's really, I'm starting to try to listen to more. It's got a fixed lens. It's not a system. It's just a singular camera with a singular lens. It's very simple. Um, but it has this incredible sensor, which is almost identical to the sensor in my Sony A7R5,
mhm.
which I absolutely love. That A7R5 has been the best camera I've ever owned, hands down, by a mile. And I'm like, wow, if I could get a compact version of that that I could just carry around that makes amazing photos. And then you add to that, there's something about the Leica lens. There's something about that glass that's special. And I was like, God, that's really pretty amazing. And so I got rid of a bunch of gear and saved up some money, and I bought this, and I got it a few weeks ago, and I've been enjoying it. The thing that really is amazing to me is it's not an easy camera to use because it's so simple. I have to really think about how I use it. It's not like my phone where I can just pick it up and take photos. I went and we were putting up the Christmas tree the other day, and I was like, oh, I'm going to grab the Leica and take some Leica pictures, and I wasn't paying attention, and the exposures were off, and I'm like, oh, it's because the window's backlighting the kids and all this stuff. So I put it down and grabbed my phone and took a few shots to make sure I had properly exposed images.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I gotta if I'm gonna pick up that camera, I gotta be in the zone. I gotta be thinking about photography and not just trying to grab photos. So, um, for me, 2023 it's been a lesson. I think taking more people photos has been edifying for me. Simplifying my photographic process has been fun, has been enjoyable, and it's been a lot less about sharing these photos and about blasting them out there on my website or on social media, and more about just the process of making photos and being around people and kind of enjoying that life. The next thing I'd like to talk about
Actually,
is, oh,
before
you're
you
going
do
to add
that,
to that? You're going to
while you
give
were
me a hard
talking,
time
I
about like
no, I can't give you a hard time about the Leica. It's just weird that now both of my podcast co-hosts are Leica people, and I guess
matter of time, Jeff.
you
You're
guys.
gonna start looking around your house at things you can sell so you can afford them. They're absurdly priced. They're
They are.
absurd.
They are.
Um, but I get it. You know, you pick one up and you use it, and you're like, I get why it's this expensive. But you know, people that I'm on several Facebook like a Q3 groups, and
Mhm.
it, it's scary, Jeff. It's we could do an episode someday about Facebook photography groups and
Oh God.
why they might be the downfall of Western civilization. But I'm amazed how many people are in these groups and they're like, I'm selling my Q2 to buy my Q3. My Q2's only got 300 shots on it. I had it for 2 years. I'm like, why are you buying a Q3
Yeah.
if you've only photographed with your last $6,000 camera 300? You know how many dollars per shot that is? You know, it's incredible. And they don't hold their value. They're not fine jewelry or fine art. They're
Yeah.
technology, and so they do
Yeah.
depreciate. Um, so I'm a little bit amazed at the people who go out and buy these things. I'm a little bit sad and ashamed almost to be a part of that culture that's like,
No, no,
I'm
no,
going to
no.
drop $6,000 on a camera and then never use it.
No, 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 no. Look, I mean, here's the thing. These things will really, I think, especially with something like this, like what you put into it is what you get out of it.
Yeah.
And also, I think that it's great that you are now in a sort of rarefied elite group
No, don't
of.
say that.
Hang
You're going to
on,
tape over that red dot.
of you are now part of this community of dentists and doctors who don't know what to do with their money.
I'm gonna go out and buy some golf clubs just to carry them around in the back of my car, right?
No,
Um,
to put it in the back of your boat. That's
yeah,
what
put
it
them back in my boat.
is. No, no, but seriously, what I was actually going for there, uh, my intention was not to make fun of you as a
Sure.
new Leica user. That just turned out to be the added bonus
It's
of the
gravy.
conversation.
Yeah, it's gravy.
Was that while you were talking, I made some smart albums to see how much I shot,
Yeah.
and because I have things spread around a little bit in Lightroom Classic, I only have like 5,000 shots,
Mm.
and in the Photos app, it's like something like 2,600 photos, and some of those are like screenshots and
Sure,
stuff from
sure.
my like Apple Watch book. But also, when I was shooting some events, I I imported those into separate Lightroom Classic catalogs so that they wouldn't all be in my big
Right.
thing because they were like client projects. So I'm probably like in the 8 to 10,000 range.
I bet you're in the 10,000 range because those events, that's a lot of images. They
That's
pile
a
up.
lot of images. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. A whole bunch of them never go anywhere and should never go anywhere. But that's the nature of event photography.
Yeah.
But yeah, like that was actually a really good quick exercise for me to do because I I come to the end of the year and people start like posting like, well, I read 17 books and I did this and this and I'm like that's awesome, and I've always wanted to do that, and then I've never actually gotten around to it, and then it just feels like a burden to me, like that's just my impression. um but in this case it was nice to go and see, oh, you know what, that did kind of track with the amount of shooting that I did, and more so not so much in numbers, but in terms of content and the different types of things that I did. So
Yeah.
to put a bow
Well,
on
and
that,
a lot of your photos, aside from the occasional event, a lot of your photos are really selective types of shoots, right?
yeah,
Landscape stuff, um, scenic stuff is not going to be thousands of images piled on.
Yeah.
I shot a lot of soccer this year, so I've got a lot of images of kids playing soccer,
Oh, yeah,
and
yeah.
out of a soccer game, I might have 8 or 10 images that I really like, and the rest are just there. And I've been trying to delete the ones that are just not ever going to see the light of day.
Mhm.
But I still end up keeping a lot. These dance performances, I photographed a few of those this year. That
Oh,
those
yeah.
hell up, and I need to go through and cull. But I've also done several architecture jobs this year,
Mm.
and I look at those photos. I'm like, wow, I shot 600 images or 700 images, and I gave the client 25.
Mhm.
What am I going to do with the rest of those? Why do I have them?
Yeah.
Great question.
Yeah.
I'll keep them for a couple years in case the client comes back and says, "Hey, did you have any of that particular facet of our work that we want to demonstrate?" Um,
Definitely.
but it's it. I look at those numbers. That number I threw out is not. Uh, it's not a lot of keepers in there that I'm really proud of. If I went through and made a best of list, which I might do at some point, it'd be a
Mhm.
small package of photos, maybe a dozen that I'm really
Yeah.
excited about. The again, it's a yoga thing, right? No one needs to watch me do yoga, but the the thing I will say is that having photographed some more people this year than I have in past years, those are the photos I think about. Those are the ones that really I kind of get warm and fuzzy about because I'm like, wow, I gave them the photos and they were really happy, and they're meaningful to them, and they're not just meaningful to me, which has been really satisfying.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and one good way of doing that, which I just did in Lightroom, was once you have that smart collection established, you can just filter for star ratings because I use star ratings a lot.
Sure.
So now I can see that out of the 5,252 shots in my Lightroom Classic library, 751 are 3 stars or better.
Wow,
So, like that's and
it's a
it's
fair
some
bit.
of yeah, and some of that is, like these are things that have been edited. If I bump that up to 4 stars, I get 56 shots. And I think, like that's a pretty good ratio of like these are good keepers that I
Right.
am proud of or that, needed to deliver to a client or whatever. So
Well, and I'd also encourage people, if you're going to do this smart collections, which I love that Lightroom has
yeah.
this functionality. I oftentimes will do equipment audits at the end of the year. Um, so, of those 17,000 photos, or of those 6,000 photos that you shot, how many were shot with such and such lens? How many were
Yeah.
shot with which camera? And that will tell you whether or not that piece of equipment needs to be in your kit. So
Yep.
that's something I like to do in my reflective periods is audit my gear as to how much I actually used them, not how much I perceived to like that gear, but how much I actually ended up producing with it. And
Yeah.
that's the proof is in the pudding, right?
Yeah, I mean, I sold 2 lenses this year that I realized I just was not using.
Yeah.
So I got rid of those. I mean, well, I guess if you take a look at the past year, you should probably get rid of your Leica because you probably haven't shot
Yeah.
very many
Barely used it.
photos.
In fact, I'm going to box it up right now. Do you want it?
I'll take it. I
Yeah.
won't buy it from you, but I'll take it.
Yeah. I'm down to one Sony camera, one Leica. I know it sounds like I'm just down to these little. I
I
don't
know.
that's this little
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Um, but I definitely looked at all my lenses this year. Like, do I need that? And there's a couple that I'm looking at kind of side eye, like, not sure you
Yeah.
belong in the closet. I really feel liberated not having stuff around that I don't really like. I'm getting old enough, Jeff. Both of us are old enough that we can be like, if you don't love it, why do you got it?
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
totally.
so all that said, we're knocking on the door of 2024. It's going to be a crazy year, right? We don't have to get into the politics of 2024, but photographically, what do you think is going to happen next year for us personally,
Mhm.
but also in the field of photography? What do you see over the horizon?
Okay, so personally, I hope that this trend will continue, and I'm hoping that well, I guess hope is not the right word because this is up to me, but I want to uh, do more in terms of attracting more photographic work.
Okay,
Um, yeah,
paid work.
because
Yeah,
I mean honestly, the stuff that I did this last year. has largely been through word of mouth, friends, which is great and it's a great way to start. But I feel like I can do more in terms of just making it known that, I'm available to do, family portraits and things like that, that I would
Mhm.
love to do and get more experience with and all of that. So I'm trying to think. I don't actually have much travel lined up so far. So like last year was huge, or 2022 was huge because like we did a big Europe trip. So that
Right.
was, I mean, that was a big photographic year. And so this year I'm going to focus more on, again, I want to keep shooting people. I want to keep photographing people. Excuse
Photographing
me.
people, let's be clear. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's get that right. Um, and try to do more event photography because I found that it's something that I really enjoy, which was
Mhm.
a surprise to me. I still have no intention of doing weddings, and I think that's perfectly okay because that's a
Totally fine.
completely different beast.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, I think 2024 needs to be a year of me trying to push beyond my little photo bubble and uh, you know get myself out there more, which
Kinda throw
is
yourself out there, right? So
throw
you're talking
myself out.
about a
Yeah.
little marketing, a little bit of,
Little marketing. Yeah.
mm, I
Yeah.
like it. I like it. You
Yeah.
definitely have the chops. So, um, I think family event, these, word of mouth is so important, Jeff. I really think that photography is one of those industries that is personality driven. It's not product driven.
Yeah.
And most people looking for photographs really don't know the difference between one photograph and another, other than they just like it, right? They don't know
Mhm.
why they like it; they just like it. And a lot of times, the reason they like it is because they liked the photograph, or sorry, they liked the photographer. They liked the way the photographer dealt with them. They liked the way that they felt with the photographer,
Yeah.
especially people photos, right? Portraits and things. So you're good on that, right? You're not an abrasive person. You're a great guy. So that word of mouth is important. I think reaching out to your existing clients and just nudging them a little bit and like, hey, if you know anybody that needs that stuff like I did for you, please let them
Mhm.
know. um, that sort of thing always makes me kind of uncomfortable, but I would definitely do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I think you're great. So uh, how about the industry? How about the photography in general? Now, one of the things that you spend a lot of time writing about is, AI and machine learning and
Mhm. Mhm.
all this stuff. Where are we headed in 2024?
Well, that's a really good question.
It's a risky question, isn't it?
Well, it's a risky question. It's a really good question because if you look at this time last year, uh, there were some, AI stuff, tools, AI based tools and things going on. I was writing a column for Popular Photography that would have been 2022,
Hmm.
that that was covering a lot of this stuff, and then generative AI just exploded. And so, I mean, honestly, like that has only been a big mainstream thing for like I want to say 9, 10 months. So last
Hmm.
December, the idea that we'd be really reckoning with photorealistic text generated art still seemed like a long way away. So it's hard now to think, all right, well, how is this going to look, even in a few months? I think a big a big side effect of this is going to be, I, I know you said you didn't want to really talk politics, but I think it's going to be with elections going on and unrest and everything in the world. We're seeing this now. Like there's going to be a lot of AI generated imagery and propaganda and all that. So I'm hoping, and I think I'm seeing some signs of this, of people getting smart or getting skeptical,
Hmm.
and trying to do things, having news organizations point out that this is something that was AI generated or AI edited,
Right.
so that people just have like a a level of trust over what they're seeing.
Hmm.
because what you're seeing is not necessarily reflective of reality anymore. And if you can take a look at something and say, "Wow, that pushes all my buttons," hang on, that pushes all my buttons. So
Right.
I need to get confirmation of this, or maybe just set this aside and see if there's another source that will show me this or that. So I think that's going to be really interesting in terms of uh, you know us as photographers and editing photos and things like that. I'm actually really looking forward to seeing what is going to be coming with more generative AI tools. I mean, I think generative AI making images from text prompts is super cool, but it's not really something that photographers are super into, or
Hmm.
maybe like they just haven't gotten into it yet. But if you have something like generative fill in Photoshop where you can erase something that's really distracting and have a very realistic, probable replacement put in there, well, that's super cool and that's super useful.
Yeah.
And right now, Photoshop has basically been the main thing in that game. Luminar just started shipping its generative AI tools. In fact, we can post a link. I wrote an article about this on my website
Yeah.
and in my newsletter, the Smarter Image, which talks about all this stuff. Um, Luminar now has that, and I'm sure all the other big photo editors are going to start incorporating this. It's not easy technology to implement, and the results are still kind of all over the map. But
Hmm.
things are going to improve, and I think in terms of you as a photographer taking a look at some of these things, you're going to have a lot more options for making quick, easy fixes that before you may have just glossed over because you knew that this was going to be an hour of work with the clone and stamp tool.
Right.
Or you have a shot of a wedding or a family gathering or an event, and you need to just make everybody look a little bit nicer. You can do that in minutes now versus a whole lot of time. So I think all that stuff is going to improve.
Yeah. I think the transition of AI, machine learning photography from gimmicks and fun toys to useful tools is next year.
Yeah.
I really look forward to, yeah, in Lightroom or Photoshop being able to say, I took a portrait of this person, but I really wish they were wearing something different. They showed up for their senior portraits and this shirt that just the color doesn't work with them, or the texture of it,
Yeah.
the pattern of the shirt doesn't work with them. Being able to adjust that and give the client or give the person a photo that kind of blows their mind is going to be really nice. I've got some ideas for some portraits of friends and family that I want to do as a series and give them as gifts that I can't do yet. Right? Like I want them posed a certain way with certain costumes on and a certain background, and that's not something I would ever take the time to facilitate physically. Um, but I'd love to. I think they'd be tickled to get something that looked realistic, that was generated
Yeah.
using
Yeah.
both
Yeah.
my photography and some
Yeah.
AI help. Um, I think one thing, and I want to call to you and your other podcast with Kirk, talked about computers and things, for in the future. And one thing that you didn't talk about, I wanted to call out is I really think that the Vision Pro system is going to change how we work with
Uh,
photos a lot.
yeah.
I think we're just going to dip our toe in next year, right? We're going to
Right.
get this thing early in the year, maybe mid-year. We'll start seeing Vision Pro, Apple Vision Pro systems in the real world.
Right.
Um, I am incredibly excited about the technology as someone who wears glasses and does not enjoy looking at a computer screen.
Hmm.
I am really looking forward to having something that is wearable, that I can work on a photo anywhere. I have an office with lots of windows. It's like sometimes I come in here to work on photos. I'm like, God, it's physically not comfortable.
Yeah.
It'd be really nice to be able to sit anywhere on an
Hmm.
airplane and work on photos. And very excited about the technology. I think that it's going to change. It's going to be one of those things that we're like, wow, why did we not do this sooner? Um, I think it's going to be transformative in how we deal with our images, not only in the editing process, but also in the consumption. I'm really looking forward to consuming images, both movies and
Hmm.
still photos, with this technology where I can sit and kind of immerse myself in it.
Yeah.
Very excited that uh, our new phones can take these stereoscopic, images that we have no idea how we're going to use them yet, but
Yeah.
that technology is in our pocket already. Being able to consume those images is going to be really fun. It's going to open a whole bunch of doors.
Well, yeah, I was just about to mention that because with the was iOS 17.2, if you have a pro camera, 15 Pro, maybe 14 Pro too. I'm not entirely
Yeah, I'm
sure,
not sure.
but basically, there's a setting now that will let you record video stereoscopically, and when you're looking at it, it's just another video. But hey, you're going to be at your family's for Christmas this year. Take some of these videos because in 6 months or 9 months, you'll already have that, and you'll have that content to be able to show somebody what that was like with that stereoscopic, that depth, all of that information already there, which is kind of cool, kind of a, I don't know, seems like kind of a bold move. We'll
Well,
have to see how it goes.
I think it really is one of those things that once we get a chance to put the silly thing on our heads, we're going to be
Mhm.
like, holy cow. It's going to be like the iPhone. It's going to be like the iPad, where it was like, this has changed how I do all these things. And I'm not even aware yet of how much it's going to change things. I teach a lot of online classes, and I've got a whole bunch scheduled in 2024. I'm going to be pretty busy with my Road Scholar classes, and I'm really looking forward to the day where I can sit with this on and look around in a room of people
Mhm.
and be virtually teaching, but feel like we're all in the same place. I know that not everybody's going to adopt this technology right away, right? This
No.
is the price point's really high.
Yep.
The step up into this technology is going to be pretty big, but it's the start. This is, I see it, it's right there. It's the door is right there. We're going to open it and we're going to be like, wow, this is things that it's going to change how we take photos. It's going to change how we use photos, and how we work on them. So I'm really excited about that. That's one of my big predictions for 2024, is that I I feel like that not a lot of people are talking about the technology because it's not out.
Yeah. Yeah.
They announced it so far back, and then everybody sort of and then it's become a murmur now. I think once it hits, it's going to be one of those things where people are like, "Wow, this is really
Yeah.
cool." There's a lot of people out there saying, "Oh, it's just stupid,"
Right.
and there's
Right.
going to be a lot more people that say that when they come out, and people start buying them. Well, you look stupid with that thing on your head, but
I
yeah,
don't care.
I don't care. Yeah, it's
I get to sit at my desk and have two monitors that are basically the size of my wall that I can look around at, and I
uh
don't have to like hunch over my tiny little laptop screen looking at my Excel spreadsheets and
exactly, with our aging eyes, like trying to
yeah,
find.
yeah.
Exactly, exactly. It's gonna be incredible. So, other thing I wanna mention, with
Uh-huh.
all that in mind, technology's, accelerating, right? It's always accelerating. We're both technology nerds, and so, I'm excited about this, but I'm also excited that camera companies are seeing that simplicity is the next step, not complexity.
How so?
The new Nikon camera, the XF, I want to say it's called. It's a
Mhm.
full frame,
Mhm.
retro looking camera. It looks a lot like your XT3. It looks a lot like my Leica, with
Yeah.
all the dials on top. That we're looking at really high end technology that is tactile and simple. And I think that is where cameras are headed. I want to see cameras that aren't trying to do so much for me, because if I want to do something crazy, I can do it later on my computer or on my vision system, right?
Mm.
I can do that stuff later. I don't need to do it in camera. It's all, I want to capture clean, high quality data without there being much technology between me and the capture process, right? I want it to be more
Yeah.
intuitive. And I see camera companies seeing that and making things simpler and more elegant. And I love that, because for so long, I felt like cameras just had more and more and more. and it wasn't always necessarily better.
Yeah.
And I think you know, I think we're, yeah, as somebody who teaches people how to take photos, and a lot of folks who are older, having cameras that when you look down at them, you don't have to turn them on and dig around in a menu or dig around in the screen.
Mhm.
Um, it just makes sense when you look at the dials and you look at the buttons. Everything makes sense. That's a big improvement. So I see that happening in the photographic world. As far as me personally, I think 2024 is going to be more about people. I'm going to try to take more people photos. Like you, I don't have any big trips planned. Um, I think we did our big trip to Costa Rica this last summer. We may not have a big trip this summer, but I really want to dig in on more people photos. And then, like you, I'd like to get more work. I'd like to do this in a professional way where I have clients. I did some senior portraits this year. I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed
Mm.
portraits a lot. I've done a lot of headshots, and I got to say, as bland as that type of photography is, there's a lot of personal interaction that gives me satisfaction in that process and capturing people who aren't really excited about having their photo taken
Yeah.
and then showing them something and they're like, oh, it's actually look pretty good. I love that. And so I want to do more of that. I want to do, I'm not sure I'm with you on events. I would do event photography, but I'm not going to look for that. I really enjoy taking photos of dancers and athletes. I'm really enjoying sports photography and dance photography. So I'd
Mm.
love to do more of that. I'd love to do photos of people doing crazy stuff. Like I went and photographed these motorcycle guys this year. I want to do more of that this coming year.
Yeah.
Seek out people doing crazy stuff and photograph, whether it be auto or motorcycle things or whatever, or sports. Spectacular stuff sounds fun to me.
Yeah.
Uh, as far as landscapes and cityscapes and things, if the light's great, I'm inspired. Otherwise, I don't need to do it.
Yeah.
I'm sort of feeling, this morning sunrise was spectacular, and I was like, "Ooh, I would love to capture that," but I'm not gonna, you know,
Get
not
out of
gonna
bed.
count on that every day. Exactly. Uh, one thing I will say is the uh, we talk about gear a lot on this podcast, and we talked about the Leicas. I don't need to bring it up again, but I
Oh,
will.
you have a Leica?
I have a Leica. Did I mention that?
Sorry.
Um, having new gear that's different and difficult and kind of challenging to use is
Uh-huh.
a bit inspirational to me. So I'm looking forward to kind of failing a little bit, trying things and failing with new gear.
That's awesome.
I've been using the same system. I've been using the Sony system for what, like 6 or 7 years now, and so I feel like it's intuitive. And having to stop and slow down and be like, "Whoa, that's not what I wanted. How come I'm not getting what I wanted?" Is going to be, I think, a good process for me. I do have one trip scheduled with Road Scholar this coming fall. So I think it's
That's right.
September. I'm going on a river cruise down the Mississippi River, and I'll be a guest lecturer on this particular trip. So it's not a photography workshop; it's music and history. But people will be able to come and take lectures from me while the boat's moving, and then when we get to the towns that we're going to, we'll be able to go and photograph musical performances and do travel type photography, and then people can get back together with me and look at the photos and stuff. So I'm really looking forward to that style of photography. That sort of traveling, music,
Yeah.
performance-based people photography is really going to be exciting. And to me, I feel like that's going to be a trip for the Leica.
That
It's going to be
that sounds
exactly what that's
amazing.
for. So
Yeah.
I'm excited about that. Reaching out, and trying some new stuff, trying some new stuff.
Yes. Yes. So, on the heels of that,
Mhm.
we will put links in the show notes to your classes, your Road Scholar classes. I'm also doing 2 classes in January. One for Kenmore Camera, which is a local great camera store where it's an in-person class, which
Could
is
people come up and give you a hug if they wanted?
they
Maybe after the
probably
class.
maybe after the class.
That
Yeah.
would be one of the
Yeah.
benefits of a personal class
Actually,
that Jeff
actually,
runs.
so I did one in November, a free one, and actually, I did give somebody a hug because it turned out that a guy who was an editor at Macworld was in town
Oh,
and showed up. I hadn't seen him for years, so then we had lunch the next week. But
sorry.
yes, in person, the last one I did went really well. So I have one
Awesome.
coming up, and then I'm also doing an online one for Rocky Nook, who is the publisher of my Lightroom book, and
Is that the Lightroom course and compendium book?
it is the Lightroom course and compendium, in fact,
Awesome book. Awesome.
which is for sale now. Use code Carlson40 to get 40% off.
We'll put a
And
link in the show notes.
we'll put a link in the show notes for that. Makes a great holiday gift or New
For
Year's
yourself.
gift, depending on
For yourself.
for yourself. And
If you didn't get one for Christmas, you can get one for yourself.
exactly,
It's allowed.
and for it makes a great Valentine's Day gift. Anyway,
No, it doesn't. It's not romantic at all.
it is, honey. I want you on your computer
Yes,
as much
exactly.
as possible.
I would love for you to get out of here and go sit in the photos.
I think we're getting a little bit silly now, but basically, yeah, I have some things coming up in January. You have classes all throughout the year, and that riverboat just sounds amazing.
Doesn't that sound fun?
I
Yeah.
can't wait to hear all the details and get pictures and yeah.
Gonna be cool. Gonna have some barbecue. Be good.
Oh,
You know, I love barbecue. So I
dude.
don't know. I'm guessing there's gonna be good barbecue on the trip, but that's great. We'll definitely include all this stuff in the show notes. It's gonna be a pretty loaded show notes page. And we do have pages for each of our episodes. So we go back, this is episode 34. So there are 33 other show notes pages at photocombobulate.com. We've got links on all those pages, links to videos. So if you want to watch us talk, not sure why you would, but you can watch the YouTube videos there, subscribe to our YouTube channel, subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen to it. We'd sure appreciate it. And we will be back in 2024. We're not done yet. We just took a little bit of a break.
Totally.
Yeah.
We are busy guys. And I would also add, please recommend and rate this podcast. That helps a whole lot.
Sure does.
And also, I want to thank Chris for sending us some questions. We do interact with other people, not just Chris, but we love getting questions. We love dispensing advice because that's really what we're here for. So go to photocombobulate.com and let us know what you're thinking. Let us know what you want to know more of, and we will do our best to do that.
And when you do visit, you're going to be presented with a little pop-up that asks you to join our email newsletter. So we'll let you know when new episodes drop, because we aren't releasing this podcast on a regular schedule right now. We're both pretty busy. So we do this when we want to do it, not when we feel like we have to. So if you sign up for that email, you'll get an email letting you know that there's a new episode, and we won't bother you otherwise. So
yeah,
sound good?
That's all we're using the email list for.
Exactly. Yeah, we're not going to try to sell you Lightroom course and compendium books or anything like that.
Oh, wait a minute. Well, now we
wait.
Oh, no, wait, we just did. Okay, there we go.
So I also want to mention, because we were both busy, we do lots of other things, that we will put links to all the stuff that we're up to, Jeff's books, articles, his AI newsletter, if you're interested in that. And then, of course, all the courses that I'm going to be teaching this coming year on Lightroom and photography. We'll put all of that in the show notes, photocombobulate.com. Thanks, Jeff. It's so good to see you, man. Sorry it's been too long.
It is so good to see you, and I can't wait till we get together again, both in person and online like this. But in the meantime, happy all of the holidays as we go into this final stretch.
And Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. I will see you next year, sir.
I'm sure you will.
I remember that was like the funniest thing when I was in 4th grade. Oh, I'm going to see you next year.
I know. I was telling my kids the other day, you won't have class again until next year. And they're like, whoa. It's like 2 weeks. All right, everybody. Take care.
All right. Bye, everyone.